welcome to Under the Hood, CX Edition. This is a podcast that originated from the realization that far too often CX terms and terminology are poorly understood. I'm Alex Devani, our Senior Relationships Manager here at Orbee, and I've had the privilege of learning alongside many of you in the industry. I'm also a marketer that is not afraid to admit what I don't know. And that's why I brought on Atul Patel, CEO of Orbee, to join me to help spell it out. So today I kind of wanted to go over the concept of iFrames. This is a very hot topic button when it comes to CX terms. And I know it has a lot of implications into the user experience. So if you can kind of help us first gain a better understanding of what an iFrame is from a technical perspective.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So iFrames are effectively websites within websites. So you could actually have a website that you're on, and if you see maybe a chat box or a pop-up, like kind of a modal window that opens, those could actually be embedded third-party websites or embedded first-party websites. It could be the same website itself, just embedded again within itself. So websites inside of websites.
Websites inside of websites. Awesome. Okay. So why would a company choose to put a website inside of their website?
Yeah.
How can you tell that you are in an iFrame?
Yeah, so let's start by looking at what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And what you're seeing here is kind of a dealership website. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of look at this sort of URL. So you can see I'm on homeandhonda.com. But when I actually open the chat widget, it turns out that when I right click, so all you have to do is right click anywhere you think that there might be another component, another website loaded from in here. And look at this. It says view frame source. And that view frame source actually means or denotes that anywhere my mouse right clicked, it's a separate iFrame. And when you actually click this button, by the way, it shows you that I'm actually on carnow.com/customer_window. So what this means is it turns out that I'm actually on carnow.com when I'm clicking around in here. So again, website 1, Home and Honda, website 2, Car Now. And that's actually how you can understand where an iFrame is and sort of how you can kind of better understand how we just said there's a website inside of a website, right?
Got it.
And now in terms of why they would do it, it's really an easy way to integrate, right? So if you're trying to embed yourself on to someone else's website, having an iFrame makes it easier. You don't have to worry about the integration or what if the component or the CSS style that makes this blue is in conflict with this button in red. So what if all buttons were told to be red? Now this section would turn red too. So when you create an iFrame, you're isolating yourself from all of the settings and the potential configurations of the website the iFrame is on. So this guy gets to stay completely independent of here, but you also lose that connectivity between the two worlds.
Got it. So actually, yeah, that was gonna be my next question. So there's clearly benefits of using an iFrame, as you just mentioned, but what would be some of the cons of using an iFrame?
Yeah, so the cons are mostly driven by, I'd say let's talk about cons for two different parties. For the dealership in our world, the con is that when the customer goes into the iFrame, you lose visibility, right? So let's say, Alex, the traffic that you have came from a Facebook advertising campaign and they landed on your main website, but then they started interacting inside of an iFrame. So it could be a chat widget, a credit form, a trade-in tool. There's a lot of these examples, right? And again, all you have to do is right-click to see if it's an iFrame. So what that means is the user came in from one traffic source and disappeared into these iFrames. And if not configured correctly to those iFrames, it looks like you just came from the outer website. It doesn't know you came from Facebook. So now you've got all this stuff happening in these iFrames, like leads are being generated, chats are occurring, and you've completely lost visibility on where this person came from the beginning of their visit, right? So that's the con for the dealer.
Yeah.
Right?
So then for like the actual user,
Yeah, the user is inconsistencies, right? Like you just said something to the main site. You either clicked a button or chose a certain selection, and it takes extra work to pass those settings, preferences, behaviors into the iFrame because those are two different websites. In fact, you can't even legally speak, like technically legally. There was a thing called CORS, cross-origin kind of settings that doesn't allow two separate domains to kind of read each other's information unless you program it properly. So that's where we see like, hey, if I'm looking at a new car, why shouldn't the chat window here, let's try this. Okay. I'm going to share my screen again and let's go ahead and try this now. Let's go ahead and shop new cars, right? So I'm now shopping new cars. I'm in the market for a new car. If I click chat, why is it asking me which thing I'm interested in? Do you see the problem here? Now, theoretically, this is technically easy to do because when I'm in this window, it can actually know that I'm on new vehicles. But it takes a lot of work with all of these web vendors and URL structures for an iFrame to be able to properly read it. So this is, again, why from a consumer experience, I'm clearly in a new vehicle. I click chat. I now need to tell it again I'm interested in a new vehicle when it could have actually skipped to that. So that's the con for the user. And then one last thing, the con for the vendor is literally it's disconnected to the rest of the dealer's experience. So when you think about performing at your best, a widget that is embedded may not, just as it can't share data back to the parent window, it also can't read from the parent window easily. And that's why most retailers that have chat or other tools, they're actually embedded in the page without iFrames.
Okay. Got it. So you introduced a new technical term within your explanation, widget. Is a widget interchangeable with an iFrame? Are they essentially the same thing?
It's a good question. Widgets can be embedded directly into the page without an iFrame. In the automotive industry, I'd say predominantly widgets are actually iFrames.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Thanks for clarifying. So these cons that you mentioned, particularly from the user perspective side of, losing that continuity, understanding, connecting the shopper's journey, how can dealerships solve for this problem? Because clearly, iFrames aren't going away. They are a useful tool. How can how can dealers better navigate data that they're receiving into these iFrames?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, if there's a system that can exist within the iFrame and within the outer frame or the page, you could actually create mechanisms to communicate between them. In fact, the IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, created ways for advertisements to speak to the outer web page, right? Because if you're thinking about ads and the control of ads, as an advertiser that might be putting their ads on, say, WebMD.com, and you have this really complicated ad unit with pharmaceutical disclaimers that are scrolling and things like that, right? You've seen these.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to be an iFrame because you don't want to ruin the outer web page accidentally. And by being an iFrame, you've protected yourself. And as WebMD.com, you also don't want to just let anyone be on your website just freely editing your web page. So iFrames makes sense. But the problem is the outer page needs to be able to speak to the inner page and vice versa, because maybe there's a synchronization between what you're reading and what the ad is. So the IAB created a way for the inside frame to speak to the outside web page through what they call safe frame. Okay, safe frames. We believe, so with Orbee, what we built is effectively a mechanism to synchronize the experience on the outer web page with what's happening on the inside iFrame. And we could actually take two completely independent iFrames and have them speak to each other through Orbee. So it's really cool. You could be in one scheduler and say, hey, my name is Alex, and you're in an iFrame. And then in another chat window that is in its own separate iFrame, it could actually say, hi, Alex, is there anything I could help you with? And we actually implement things like that with service schedule abandonment, with chat widgets and so forth. And to me, that's so exciting because you have not only a web page and another web page company, you've got a third web page. So you got this crazy iFrame situation going on. And there's actually a system that can help coordinate all of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, me as a user, sometimes I go to a website and I kind of get, bombarded with all these, now I know, iFrames.
Yes.
So I can, as a user, I could definitely understand the importance of them being able to talk to each other so that they don't bombard me. Well, anyways, that was super insightful. Thank you so much. I hope, I definitely am leaving the conversation more enlightened on what iFrames are, their pros, their cons, and, how dealers can solve for them in the future. Do you have any last words in regards to iFrames, the tool?
Well, I would simply say, as a dealership, go around your website and right-click in places that you might have thought that this third-party tool was maybe an iFrame, and that will give you better insights into where there might be kind of a disconnect on your customer journey. And then you could either reach out to us or reach out to the vendor and say, hey, when a user goes from my outer website into your widget, how can I actually follow that customer journey into there? And if they don't have an easy answer, ask if they'd collaborate with Orbee to help solve for some of that, and we can make it happen.
Awesome. So you gave us the tools on how to identify where our gaps might be. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Atul. Always a pleasure talking to you. I'll see you next week.